Welcome back to the show again. Now, our next segment shines a spotlight on an initiative that underscores the importance of social welfare and care for the elderly in Nigeria. The First Lady of Nigeria, Oluremi Tinubu, has announced the disbursement of 1.9 billion naira under the Renewed Hope initiative, benefiting 250 elderly citizens across the country. Now, this includes some military veterans, each receiving 200,000 naira, double the amount from last year. But what does this mean for the beneficiaries? What was the atmosphere like during the disbursement exercise in Abuja? And what insights can we gather from this act of governance?
Joining us now is Amadin Uyi. He is the head of News Central's Abuja Bureau, and he joins us for more on this. Amadin, thank you so much for the insightful report. Now, let's get closer into this. You were at the disbursement exercise in Abuja. Could you paint a picture for us? What was the atmosphere like during the event?
Okay, thank you for clarifying the mix-up there. The event which you initially talked about, the Renewed Hope Initiative, which was launched by the First Lady, now focused on elderly persons. But what happened was that this year, there was a partnership between not just the elderly, also elderly military veterans who have retired, who are on pension, but it's been sort of difficult. Now, what the Renewed Hope Initiative was doing since the administration, since the commencement of this administration, was to issue them a check of 100,000 naira. But for this year, because of the inflation, because of the high cost of goods and services, it doubled that check to be 200,000 naira. And in the FCT, for the first phase, about 250 beneficiaries. But one thing that should be noted, significantly noted, is that the initiative is not focusing only on the FCT, but on several states of the country. So it's not only the 250 people in the FCT forming the first phase that are beneficiaries of the 1.9 billion, but across the entire length and breadth of the country. For those who came, they were excited because beyond just giving them checks, they were issued bags of rice and other palliatives that would support as support for their festive celebrations.
And one has to also talk about, the First Lady. She emphasized the inclusion of military veterans in this initiative. And I have to ask you, how did they go about, just finding the veterans and just recognizing who is required or who meets the requirement or criteria for inclusion for this initiative?
Okay, Judith, in order to solve that problem, what they did was they partnered with the Defense and Police Officers' Wives Association, also known as DEPOA. It's also a social support initiative, an NGO that is headed by the wife of the Chief of Defense Staff. They have their list. They deal with the families and wives of soldiers and military veterans. So what DEPOA did was to just compile that list for the Renewed Hope Initiative and invited them.
Amadin, I have questions regarding the recipients of 200,000 naira. Now, we hear that this is double from last year, and this is something to be lauded. But comparing last year and this year and the economic realities that we face right now, I'm wondering how the recipients received these amounts. How grateful were they or not? Do tell, please.
Now, when we were on the scene, we saw that they were excited a lot, but they just couldn't speak because it was this was done within a military facility, and for the military, one thing that you have to give them is orderliness. But the First Lady had spoken. The wife of the Chief of Defense Staff, who heads that NGO known as the DEPOA, had also spoken, and they were excited. In fact, when they heard that that stipend had been increased from 100,000 naira to 200,000 naira, you could see the excitement on their faces. It's like, how many people earn 200,000 naira when you have minimum wage about 70,000 naira? So they were really excited, and you just knew that Christmas had come early for many of them.
Amadin, and that's very, laudable, one has to say, because at a time like this, 200,000 naira is If you dash me, I'll dance too.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, if you gave me to her, I'll be happy as well. It's money, you know. I mean, but as a journalist, as we all are here having this conversation, were there any challenges for you just, in covering and filing this report? And when you're talking to the beneficiaries, what was it like? What did make it into this report for you?
Very few, like I said, spoke to us off camera because it was the event held within a military facility. And as press, we had clearance. So covering that report, there was no problem. But just like I said, it was not just only the 200 naira cash. There were bags of rice, granite oil, and other support, other things that were added to the 200,000 naira. So it was not like they were giving them 200,000 naira and telling them, go to market, buy your rice. They also benefited from bags or half bags of rice. A bag of rice is almost 45,000 naira. So if you add others that they received from the Renewed Hope initiative, which is being spearheaded by the First Lady, you could well calculate over 300,000 naira for just this festive season. And one thing you have to note, that Nigeria there's always been that criticism that we don't take care of our elderly, that especially those who have served the government in various capacities, served as civil servants, served in the military. We put them through that ordeal of going to queue, spend long hours trying to get their pension. So for the Renewed Hope initiative to come to where they stay and say, see, you're not going to go through that stress. We have come to meet you. I think the First Lady should be commended, and that initiative should also be commended for targeting the elderly, targeting elderly and military veterans. I think it was a big hit.
Yes, indeed. That's fantastic. Amadin, could you please confirm for us, the report we played erroneously showed Wike also doing something similar. Could you confirm if that is the same occasion, if that was the same event, please?
No, the report you played earlier was when Wike distributed palliatives, still under the Renewed Hope Youth Initiative. He distributed vehicles, provided support to youth within the FCT. Remember that youths had always been complaining that they are just in the city center. They see a lot of development. There are no jobs. They don't have, there's no connection between them and the administration. So what the FCT minister did was that after commissioning a series of programs, a series of projects, what he did was that for the last day, he gathered youth, bought vehicles because they are trying to scrap private vehicles, trying to stop them from engaging in transportation services because many have attributed it to the one chance syndrome and saying criminal syndicates like the one chance are taking advantage of it. So what the FCT administration has begun to do, they buy vehicles, distribute to the youth and tell them use it for transportation. They allocate them to certain areas within the FCT and say, we don't want to see private operators but we are going to provide vehicles, let the youth use it. And the vehicles were provided as grants. They were brand new vehicles. There's no repayment period back. It was just provided by the FCT administration for them to start life in a way of reducing unemployment and at the same time tackling insecurity.
Okay. Judith has a math question for you. But before she asks that math question, I wanted to know what it was like seeing the FCT minister doing something that is, well, counter to what he's known to do. In recent times, you're laughing, Judith, but this is true. In recent times, he's been known to take from people. He says that these are people who got these properties or whatever it is unscrupulously, but this time he's giving back. So what did that mean for the people? Did people see him in a new light? Did people congratulate him, or were people happy that this was what
was there shock for seeing him in a different light? That was the question.
Was there shock
out loud?
Was there shock?
Judith, if you are on ground within the FCT, I'm telling you, his perception on ground is different from the perception that is on social media, which is being peddled by several people.
Wow.
On ground, he's called Mr. Project. So when you follow social media, you think he's one villain that everybody is against. But in reality, while I don't want to judge his actions, one thing I know is that the FCT minister has always come out to say there should be law and order, because it seems Abuja is only for the rich. They allocated plots of land, they don't pay ground rent, they don't pay taxes, and they just live their lives as if there is no tomorrow. And so you see another class of society just sitting down, looking at the rich and powerful within the FCT and saying these ones are above the law. But now there is a minister who has come up to say, I'm going to take on these guys. They should pay their due to the federal government. Now, how legitimate or not, I'm not in a position to tell. But I want to tell you that many people, especially the poor, and if we say there's a middle class, they are excited about the action he's taking. You come to the rural communities, the satellite communities that have been abandoned, the area councils that there is no federal project. He's bringing projects to these people. So for me, who is on ground, I will tell you that his perception on social media is different from what people on ground see it as. For the first time, the FCT administration set up a youth secretariat, appointed a youth mandate secretary, which is like a youth commissioner, set up a women's secretariat, appointed a women mandate secretary, which is like a women commissioner. So you see, he has initiated these moves, which the residents, especially the original inhabitants, who feel that they have been marginalized. For the first time, they have a permanent a head of service of the FCT Civil Service Commission. It has never happened before. So I will tell you that sometimes just take a step back, sit down, relax, and try to remove, just don't judge based on what you are seeing on social media. Speak to people on ground and get the true perception of how people see him. Yes, nobody can be good to all people, but it's really the rich and powerful who have power to influence social media and pay influencers that are really against the actions of the FCT. But for those in the rural communities, at least I stay in a satellite community, come and call in some wiki, and I'll tell you that everybody here is commending him.
Well, good for him. You know, that's the most important thing is that people adore him, and you know his constituents want what he's doing. So good for him. Well, and also he has to be concerned. You know what I mean? Because if your digital footprint gives a different perception of what people think about you in real life, you want to have a rethink. You know what I mean?
I beg to differ. I beg to differ.
Digital footprint is important to us, you know.
Very true, Judith.
You know, I mean, digital footprint is important. You have to think about, you know, if people think it is certain, I'm just saying, anyway, away from that, all right? Humor me for a second, Amadin, and help me, like, do this math, because I'm trying to solve this math in my head. Forgive my brain. So 200,000 naira for 250 elderly would come to, say, about 50 million. And we have 1.9 billion already spent on this Renewed Hope initiative by the First Lady. So it begs to ask the question, if you take out 50 million from 1.9 billion, we're left with about, let me see, about...
It's still in billions.
There's still billions, about 80 billion thereabout, just languishing somewhere. Where did the rest go?
Like I said, if you heard me clearly, I said that we only covered the distribution in the FCT, which is the first phase. There's still going to be a second and third phase, but from the information I gathered, that distribution happened across the country, in several states. I know it happened. I'm sure I saw in the news of the distribution exercise that also happened in Lagos. And then also, I said, apart from the 200,000 naira bags of rice were being distributed. It's not just 250 people benefiting across the country. It's 250 benefited under the first phase in the FCT. The same event is undergoing simultaneously across the 36 states of the Federation. And then there's going to be a second phase. And then apart from the 200,000, other palliative support were also added for them.
Well, Amadi, we must say thank you so much for just taking out the time to... although this time, sounding like as if we are one of those people inside the parliament. Amadin Uyi is the head of our New Central's Abuja Bureau. We want to say thank you so much for taking our time this morning to join us, Amadin. Once again, many thanks.